Welcome to Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I'll be covering every studio song the band has recorded and every bonus track that I can find. Each week we'll go over a new song from the beginning to where they are currently, and as they keep adding albums, I'll keep adding shows. Let the deep dive party begin.
In the magic garden, some were singing, some were dancing.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I am your host, Scott Haskin, on this fan-based, band-endorsed podcast going through all the music of Uriah Heep. So excited that their new album, Chaos in Color, has finally come out. It was recorded months ago in Europe, mixed over in LA. Jay Rushton did an amazing job producing what I've heard so far, which has been one song. But it's a great song. So we're going to get into that today. Of course, today is Monday. I hope you guys all had a fantastic weekend. There have been a couple of changes to the Deep Dive Podcast Network. So I'm going to go over those shows with you guys real quick before we get into today's song. Check it out. We have a show called Backtracks, Aerosmith Revisited. Corey Morissette and John Mariano are the hosts of that show. I was a guest on a couple of shows, and on one of the shows they said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if you were just a permanent co-host with us? And I said, yeah, that'd be great. And then we talked about it, and boom, I am now a permanent co-host on that show that airs on Wednesdays. You can check my website where you can find my Uriah Heep podcast page, scotthaskin.com. Link is in the show notes. You go to that page, you can click the Uriah Heep podcast link, you can click the Aerosmith podcast link, or you can click any of my other links, but you will find both of those shows there, as well as a link to my other show, the Haskin Cast podcast. And continuing along the Deep Dive Podcast Network, John and Corey also have another show called Backtracks Theme Music, where they go over music from film and television, and a really cool show. Corey Morissette also has another show with Mark Kmeyer that is called And the Podcast Will Rock, which is all things Van Halen. Then, of course, we have Nate and John at the Deep Purple Podcast. I was on that show recently. Back-to-back weeks, we did a dual-part episode of reviewing Rainbow's album, Stranger in Us All, the last full album from the band Rainbow. And let's see, what else have we got? We have The Simple Man at Skinnerd Reconsidered. We have Terry T-Bone Mathley at T-Bone's Prime Cuts on the Other Side. We have Riot Sabbath Bloody Podcast. We have Paul, Joe, and David at In the Lap of the Pods, all things Queen. We have Andy and Matt at Hawk Binge, a Hawkwind podcast. We have Eric and Jonathan at Maiden A to Z. Of course, we're talking Iron Maiden there. We have Daniel and Josh at Diary of the Madmen, the ultimate Ozzy podcast. Can't disagree with that. We have Ben and Sam at Universally Speaking, the Red Hot Chili Peppers podcast. We have George and Hattie over at the newly branded Judas Priest cast. We have Clay and Rye at North by South podcast, which is kind of, a contrast and comparison of bands from both facets of North America, the United States and Canada, since one lives in Canada, one lives in the States, and they just kind of go at it and have a lot of fun with it. We have Greg and Jonathan at So Far, So Pod, So What, our Megadeth podcast. We have Kevin at the Tom Petty Project. Kevin also does another show with his buddy Randy at Seaside Pod Review, which is another podcast about Queen. We have Quinn at And Volume for All. And lastly, we have Sav, Nick, Steve, and Mark at the Rock Roulette podcast. Boy, that is a mouthful, no doubt. A lot of great shows to listen to. Every one of them's got its own flavor, its own style. And, the ones that, there's ones that we do solo, there's ones that they do as a group. It's just an amazing potpourri of podcasts, if you will. There's some are being added now and then. I'm sure before much longer, there will be more podcasts added to that list. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention our friends over at Metallicast. We got Brandon. And if you want the history of Deep Purple, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and more, go check out gottahear'emall.com. And then we have Louder with Ace, Uriah Heep's manager's podcast. He comes in with a show every now and then. Did a really interesting one not too long ago about, record pressings and that. Very informative show. Check that out. That is all on the Deep Dive Podcast Network, and then some additional friends of the show. So lots of great stuff going on out there. Let's see. Is there any other news? No, that's it. So I say we get right into today's song. This is track number 2 on Chaos in Color, the brand new album from Uriah Heep. And this is called Silver Sunlight. First time hearing it. great grinding sound from Dave Rimmer on bass there. I love that. I'm so glad that that was isolated right there. Really cool start. I like the drum fill at the beginning. It's interesting to have that little space there right before the music starts, because I think there's a natural subconscious thing, at least with drummers like myself. But I would imagine most people do this, whether they realize it or not. We try and find a tempo. We want to be able to bob our head, snap our finger, tap our foot, whatever it is. We want to connect with the piece of music. And it's interesting because you don't really get to feel the tempo exactly right at the beginning. The drum fill doesn't give anything away. You think you're going to go right into the song, and then there's a breath before it all kicks in, which is nice. Love the sound of the organ here. I think that's cool. I can hear the bass. That's great. It's interesting because in the last episode, I did talk about what had changed in my system since I upgraded to Windows 10 from 8.1, which I was quite happy in until, some of the software that I use kind of pushed me to do the update. And it was, I'll just say, an adventure making all of that happen. But once I finally got everything working, one thing that I noticed is when I'm doing this kind of review where I'm playing the song off of a player, and so I can do it in little chunks and recording it into my audio workstation, it was just kind of making everything look like it was Brickwall Limited, whether it really was or not. And if I would load the waveform in, I could see that it wasn't. I speculated that this album was Brickwall Limited, like Living the Dream was. And so I, after I did the show, I went ahead and just loaded the whole waveform for Save Me Tonight in, and I looked at this one, and it is absolutely, both of them are Brickwall Limited, which in a lot of cases, I am not a fan of this kind of current audio production. However, as I have said before, if the mix is really good, you can Brickwall limit and still be able to hear a lot of the dynamics of the song. And that has always been my issue with Brickwall limiting, is that it kills a lot of the dynamics and you miss so much of the hard work that musicians put into the song. You're just basically obliterating parts of their performance. I don't know if I'm missing anything, but knowing Heep's music as well as I do, I would say that we're hearing what they did. And, a producer that really knows what they're doing, along with a mix engineer that really knows what they're doing, you can mix it well enough and still Brickwall limit it and still really feature the band. And I think that's what we have going on here. I would imagine they used some kind of saturation or tape warmer to, bring back some of that warmth and get away from that digital processing sound, because it does sound good. We'll see how it sounds when we get Bernie in here, who I would imagine is coming up right after this part. But I'm loving mixed sound. I'm loving the Hammond. The bass and the drums sound great. I'm really, really digging the production on this album. I'm going to say it again. I said it in the last episode, but this is such a fantastic drum mix for Russell. I love the way his drums are sounding. Those toms, they're really just sitting perfectly in there. They're not too bright. They're not dull, but they really shine through. And especially in a song like this, where he's really featuring them, playing them as the beat instead of the normal, kick snare and hi-hat or kick snare and ride so far. They really come through and they sound fantastic. Absolutely great job on the kit. Really loving Bernie's voice. He sounds as good as he ever has, honestly. He's been in the band 30 plus years and still sounds with so much power, and he sounds just smooth and fantastic. I love mixed guitar sound. It's not too much distortion. It's not too chunky. It's not too fuzzy. It's just like he really knows how to find a great tone. It sounds very much like his tone on Living the Dream. I don't know if there are any equipment changes. A lot of guys by this point, they have their gear, and then it just comes down to, okay, we moved it. We have to set it up. Some dials shifted. The EQ has to be set. Maybe they saved their sound from last time in the mixing board so that they could get really close to it. I don't know. I would imagine that they just found the way to dial in the sound. but his guitar sounds absolutely fantastic. And of course, he's such a good player. It's just like chopping through butter. Really, it's so effortless. It sounds so effortless. I'm sure it's not. That lick that Mick is putting in there, it sounds so familiar, but I can't place it. I don't know if it's reminiscent of something he's done or somebody else did, but God, it's just like right so close to the tip of my brain. But it's a cool little filler. That's one of the things that's so signature of Mick is these little fillers that he puts in. I noticed too, when I was on the Deep Purple podcast and we were reviewing Stranger in Us All, Richie Blackmore does that a lot too. He's just always filling in these little spaces with little things to keep the song interesting. And really, even if they're repetitive sometimes, it just feels like there's just something different. There's always something new to focus on or to hear and divert your attention or prevent it from getting overdone. And I find that fascinating because even if it's repetitive, it does that. Maybe it's just that it's a new sound that's a short burst of a new sound and it distracts you. It's a new focus. I don't know exactly the psychology behind it, but it certainly works. But this is cool. And I really love the feel of this song. You know, it's, I don't know exactly how to explain the mood, but it feels like just, it's intriguing. You know, it's hooking me to go, I want to know what happens next. I want to feel the next part of the song. And before I'm even through the part I'm on, I'm like, okay, this is cool. What's next? And it's exciting. And I love songs that have this kind of feel to them because they really, they feel like a more epic story. Whether it is lyrically or not, I don't know yet, but it feels like it's just like a story we've all got to gather around and hear. And I love that feel. I could be wrong because it's really blended in there, but I think I'm hearing Phil on keyboard doubling what Bernie's singing. And that's pretty cool. Either way, whatever the process is to get there, this is a really cool sound with the vocals. I mean, I'm hearing a couple of layers of vocals, but on top of that, there's another sound, and I think it's Phil. It sounds really cool. And I love the tempo changes in the song too. Well, we're only a minute and 32 into this song, which is 4 minutes and 31 seconds. So we're about a third of the way through. And to me already, this song is a masterpiece. There's been so many changes, so many parts, so many different levels of vocals and harmonies. And it really is a pretty epic song. And I'm digging it. I really love the power in the fast part. I love the drama when it slows down to halftime. This is a kick-ass piece of music right here. those runs were pretty cool. And they had, trying to remember what the era was. I want to say it was the John Sloman era, where there was just that sound that was so 80s on mixed guitar. And it really sounds like that sound here. And I love that. I think it blends in really nicely. A little bit quiet. I could use a little bit more of it in the mix. Along with the solo, I thought that was a little quiet. But again, it's just the way that I'm hearing things through these particular headphones. But really cool solo. Not overplaying it as always. It had such a Mick feel to it. I'm sensing just a little bit of flange on there. I thought I heard some on one of the vocal layers earlier too. I forgot to mention that. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's just a little bit in there. Not enough to really notice it as a flange, but there's definitely an effect on there. But I'm loving the sound on that. It was different from the rhythm that we're hearing, for this guitar part. Really cuts through, though. I love the frequencies that he's staying in. Love the feel of the solo. Man, like every section I'm liking this song more and more. What could you ask for in a song more than we're getting here? We're getting great vocals. We're getting a lot of cool keyboards, guitars, bass, really active drums, lots of changes. It's just, this is a powerful piece of music. This is a nice little change. It's kind of unexpected. I would have thought that, either Mick or Phil would be doing a little bit of solo over the top of this, but I kind of like that they're not. I think it just adds more to the dramatic feel of the song instead of them trying to fill every spot with something. Just to have a nice little bed that goes here of, just the notes on guitar, solid keyboard playing. This is cool. Wow, unexpected. I did not see that coming. I mean, I knew we were getting close to the end of the song. I thought maybe we were going to get a fast fade or something, but no, it just stops. Really dramatic too. And then you just get the ring of Russell's cymbal, and that's it. I love the build at the end, just going from that straightforward part that I commented on, and then Phil coming in, playing over top of that. And I was like, where does this go? What's going to happen next? And it just stopped. So unexpected. Very, very cool. I love the sound of the organ there too. That's really nice. That definitely felt a very Uriah Heep style song. And I could not be happier. I think it's a great piece of music. What do you guys think? I mean, this is new territory for all of us, right? The album just came out. We're all, some people have heard it a couple times. I saw one person listen to it like 4 times the day it came out. These are first listens for me, so I'm listening for the first time as I'm recording these episodes. Really good. Really good. I'll have to try another pair of headphones. I want to see if I can hear a little bit more of Dave in the mix would be nice. because I'm not getting as much bass as I'd like to hear, and so the songs don't sound as fully well-rounded. They're very close. Also, I kind of felt in that passage before Phil came in with the with almost that solo part at the end. I kind of feel like the keyboards were much louder than the guitar, so it was a little bit off balance, but it didn't sound bad. They don't always have to be, evenly balanced or balanced left and right. Sometimes you want the guitar to be subtle and the keyboards to be louder. So I'm saying that's very possibly very intentional. But it was interesting how the guitar was being a little more featured because the keyboards were just playing those straight chords and the guitars were playing the notes, but it was a little more buried. And then when Phil came in, he was already over the top of Mick. Sounded good, just not what I would have expected, but neither was the ending. So that's just how it goes sometimes. Very interesting. And another great song. I think this is one that will be heavy in my play rotation, certainly as well as the first one that we listened to. So 2 songs in, I'm absolutely loving this album. The production is great. The performances are great. The writing is just as good as ever. I saw a lot of posts in the last year or so. Well, really, I guess since the album was announced, or it was announced that they were working on a new album, people posting things like, I don't know how they're going to top Living the Dream. It's not about topping what you did last. It's just about writing great music. Things don't have to be better than the last thing, because what's your comparison? I mean, how do you even judge whether something's better? You either enjoy it or you don't. It's something that you either want to hear again or you don't. I can say there's certainly songs that I would love to hear over and over and over again. Like, I couldn't tell you how many times I've listened to Salisbury in my life. That's one of my favorite songs. And so, yeah, I love that. But at the end of the day, it's either yes or no. I want to hear a song again. And of the 2 that I've heard so far, I have to say, absolutely, I'm looking forward to hearing them again. But first, I'm going to listen to the rest of the album, and then I'll go back and start listening to them again and again, which I surely will, because so far, very happy with what I've heard. This is it. It's interesting because this was the first time that they had to write really remote, and you never know how that's going to change things. And of course, time away from each other causes maybe different influences because you're listening to other things. You've been off tour for a while, so you don't have that. Okay, we're done touring. We're going to take a couple of weeks off, and then we're going to start writing sessions. So there was a distance in the flow of things. So you never really know how all those components can affect how the writing goes. But I think once everybody got back together, for certain, anything that was missing or off kilter because of those events certainly would have been put back together once the band was all in the same room. Because then it's like you're hitting the reset button on everything. It's like, okay, now that we're all together, all of our creative minds are together again in the same room. Our energy's feeding off of each other. We're working on things together. It's like anything that might have not been there because of those COVID circumstances certainly would have come back in a very quick time during the rehearsals and the recording process. So 2 songs, 2 thumbs up for each song. If I could grow more thumbs so I could have more thumbs up, well, hell, I'd do it. But in the meantime, I hope you guys have a great day. We're kicking off Monday with the right way, with a great piece of Uriah Heep music. So you guys enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of the Magicians Podcast. Cheers. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Uriah Heep, the Magicians Podcast. If you have enjoyed this show, please consider going over to Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast outlet, leaving a rating or a review. Be sure to subscribe to make sure that you are notified when new episodes are available. Please be sure to share this podcast with your fellow Uriah Heep enthusiasts and anyone who you think would like Uriah Heep, which should be everyone. And if you are so inclined, please feel free to contribute to the Patreon account. And if you are not a Patreon subscriber, you can also pay through the PayPal link on the website listed in the show links below. I would also like to thank Uriah Heep for their very generous support of the show. And thank you guys for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Happy days!